All right, everybody, it's 6 o'clock. We're back. So, this is City of Avondale Estates, Georgia. This is Board of Mayor and Commissioners. It's June 26, 2024. It is 6 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order. We have an agenda before us. Do I have a motion to adopt?
So moved.
That was Mayor Pro Tem. Do I have a second?
Second.
That's Commissioner Rainey. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. So this is a public hearing, the second public hearing for the 2024 millage rate. The governing authority of the City of Avondale Estates has tentatively adopted a 2024 millage rate of 3.55 mils. Sorry, did I say 3?
Yes.
9, my bad. Okay. Well, first of all, we will be taking questions. Obviously, we'll try to answer your questions as best we can. If we cannot answer your question or answer it expeditiously, we will ask for your email or some sort of contact, and we will get back to you. Okay. Some things are easier to explain than others, or we may not be prepared. We're not sure what you're going to ask, so we will attempt to do so. We just ask that everybody be respectful. Mr. Manager, was there something you wanted to tee up with?
Yes, thank you. What we would like to do for the sake of allowing everybody to be able to express their opinion is to ensure that we limit our comments to a period of 3 minutes, so that we're not here all night, I suppose, but really for the purpose of allowing everyone who wants to speak the opportunity to speak, especially given the fact that during normal public hearings, it is usually comment only, but tonight we are allowing for each person who does make comment to also ask a question that may require us to provide information in response to that question. So if everybody is aware, what we'll do is the same thing that we did at the last meeting. There is a timer that will be displayed up on the screen so that anyone who's making comments will be aware of the time as they do so.
Okay. All right. So that said, this is a public hearing, which means we're here to hear from you. So if you could just hold up your hand, I'll try to go in order. If you could approach the podium, if you don't feel comfortable with that, that's fine. You can stay where you are. Just name and address, please. And again, limit it to the time mentioned. Yes, sir.
I'll stay where I am. More comfortable.
That's fine. That's fine. Totally fine.
Anyway, I'm Donald Schreiber, and me and my wife live over on 33 Berkeley Road. And from what I understand, the millage rate is supposed to increase our property taxes by 4.16%, something like that. I think it is. And my property tax alone, getting the appraisal this year, has gone up by 13.5%. And I think that's probably not unusual for the area. So I'm wondering, is it really necessary, the way property taxes have gone up, that's going to increase city revenues? Is it really necessary to raise the millage rate right now, the way property taxes are going up now?
Okay. We were given the opportunity recently to advertise an increase in millage rate. We did not do that because we don't intend to do that. We can only set the rate at 9.55 or less. So in the way the language is, we're not increasing the millage rate, but that doesn't mean your taxes aren't increasing. We're not increasing the millage rate. We can't. We didn't advertise to do so. So that's point number one. And what's that?
You want me to explain that?
Well, yeah. And the other thing is just there's two parts to this equation. We said we adopt a budget in December. We get a tax digest recently, and we're adopting a millage rate. but your property value is not set by us, it's set by the tax assessor. We have zero control over it. You can appeal it. A lot of people do. And I'm not saying you ever should or shouldn't, but you can do that. Anyway,
Yeah.
I think
Thanks. I think this is a good opportunity to explain some things and clarify the language that we are required to use in our press release versus the actuality of what is happening. So the state legislature many years ago passed a law that required municipalities to suggest they are raising taxes if they don't roll back the millage rate to a multiplier that would keep revenue from year to year being generated from existing property flat. So I know it's misleading and it's very confusing and we don't like it either. But the advertised rate that the board is considering is the exact same millage rate that it adopted last year. So there is no proposed change to the millage rate. Now, here's where it tricks you. The only way to advertise that there is no tax increase would be to advertise a millage rate at what they call the rollback rate. So how is the rollback rate calculated? Well, it's calculated by the gross value of all existing the growth of the gross value of all existing property within the city's boundaries. That does not include any new value that has been created in the digest within the city's boundaries. Obviously, you can't roll back a millage to something that hasn't ever generated value previously. I mean, that's the logic. So if we were to keep everything flat, right, generate the exact same amount of revenue this year as we did last year, then the board would adopt a millage of 9.169. However, staff would argue to the board that if you do that, you can't cover the increase in cost of normal expenditures from year to year, meaning any salary adjustments, any inflationary changes to materials or utilities or anything like that. So even though it suggests that the city is raising taxes, the board is actually considering a millage rate that is the exact same as last year. So any increase in revenue that the city receives is from an increase in the value of existing property or any new value created from properties that came online within the past year. For example, last year we had a new property come online called Olive and Pine, which is an establishment in the downtown, right? So that was new value that was added. So I say all that to say the increase in the value of existing properties within the gross digest, not the net digest, because the net digest then applies exemptions that certain properties have to their taxable value. And exemptions are like abatements or homestead exemptions, stuff like that. So the gross value of all the property that existed in the city from 23 to 24 went up by 4.16%. Now that doesn't mean that each property went up 4.16%. We know that, right? So like you said, your property appraised at a 13.5% increase than it did last year. That is a common refrain from property owners in this community. Some property owners in this community had a 0% increase. So that's how it kind of balances out. Now, you can theorize why that is, but the county is responsible for assessing the appraised value of properties. Like any other organization, they have only so many staff that can focus on that task. That staff can get to certain properties every year, properties not every year. You know, and then residential valuation, the process to evaluate residential properties is different from the process to evaluate commercial properties, because commercial properties generate revenue and there are other ways to calculate value based on the revenue a property is generating. Say all that to say this: there is a mechanism in place that the county provides for property owners to appeal the value of their appraisal in any given year. And that information is contained on the notice of assessment that the county mails to everybody, you know, at the beginning of June. Last year, for example, there were a lot of properties in the city who went forward with an appeal, and those appeals, a lot of those appeals were granted. And we discussed it in the regular meeting, which was, you know, one of the reasons we had to amend the budget was because we didn't generate as much revenue as we anticipated, in large part to appeals that were awarded, which decreased the value of property in the city and therefore decreased the amount of revenue generated from that property. And then one more point that I'd like to share is that in addition to that ad, the state also requires municipalities to publish a 5-year history of levy, right? And that 5-year history is net instead of gross. So it's after all the abatements are applied. And it suggests that the projected revenue from 23 to 24 would increase by 11.76%. Now, I want to point out that that number is preliminary, not final, because it doesn't consider all of the appeals that will be awarded as a result of the appeal process period. Last year, it cut our increase in half. So we anticipate a similar result this year, meaning that that 11.76 increase in the net, in the net value will be cut as appeals are granted. And so, unfortunately, we budget 6 months in advance of knowing what the digest is going to be. So it's a little bit of a, you know, it's a little bit of a guessing game. The reason we do that is because we operate on a calendar fiscal year instead of a federal fiscal year. It would be incredibly difficult at this point in the city's history to switch from a calendar year to a fiscal year. So it's very difficult for us to be able to project where we need to be. And I'll have to commend our staff for doing a really good job of it. You know, we try to accurately predict the revenue that we're going to receive, and we try and accurately predict how inflation is going to affect our expenditures. And we do a pretty good job. Sometimes it's not 100% accurate, and that's the reason we have the budget amendment process during the year, so that we can react as conditions change. So that is kind of a general primer on what we have to consider. And Mayor Pro Tem Shortell, I know I've discussed this matter with her at length. And
well, I just think you said it, Patrick, but I want to emphasize that the 11.76 net tax increase is not the same as the average increase in residential property values. So just make sure that you understand that, because there's lots of stuff out there floating around kind of equating that, and that's really important to know.
And then one last comment, if y'all allow. is the process by which we have to follow in order to publish our advertisements. So the last week of May, the county sends us digest information. And they send the consolidated digest, which shows your gross value and your net value and your exemptions and all that kind of stuff. They also send us spreadsheets, like the rollback rate spreadsheet and the average value calculation spreadsheet. So the county sends us all this and then says, okay, plug your values in. Then before you can even publish your press release or your 5-year tax levy or anything like that, literally we are required to send it back to the county before publishing. So they send us the information, we fill it out, we send it back to them, they approve it, and then we publish it. So even our ability to publish language and numbers is all generated by the county. Now, we've had, every city in DeKalb has had discussions with the county about how ridiculous this is. The county also feels that it's ridiculous. They have petitioned the state legislature for changes to the language for years and years and years. It has been a priority of our professional organization, the Georgia Municipal Association, and it just hasn't materialized in the way that we would have liked it to. So we apologize for the confusion. I'll be the first to say I hate it, because every June, the same, it's a Groundhog Day effect, right? We have to start talking about the exact same confusion every single year. And I would love to be able to explain it all clearly in our written materials, so we didn't have to go through this exercise of trying to explain why the language we publish is so darn confusing. But unfortunately we do, and I appreciate everybody's patience in letting me try and explain it all tonight. Thank you.
Good primer.
Okay. Yes, Rod.
Rod Dupre, 1111 Banbury Cross. Our property taxes went up 30%. Most of that is school tax, and then the other big chunk of that seems to be the city. Would y'all have information on the range of property tax increases, for all residents of Avondale, and what the distribution is? Is there 25% of the households that got 20-30% increases like I did, or is it just an aberration? And to the extent that there's a large proportion of that range, is there something that the city can do on behalf of the residents instead of, in addition to individual, pursuing a remedy, with the county?
So to answer your first question, that's a really hard, monumental task for us to do, because we get a spreadsheet that shows each property's value individually. So then we would have to take that and compare it to the previous year's spreadsheet of those properties to see what the value change would be property to property. Now, in general terms, I can say that it's not that the county revalues 25% of the residences this year and then 25% of residents this year, and they do so to a level across the board. That's not the case. It's really individualized. So whereas your property may be appraised at a value 30% higher than it was last year, your neighbor may have their value appraised at 8% higher or not higher at all. It's very random. But what you can see is kind of a average, if you will, of increase in value in the different sectors. So the Consolidated Tax Digest shows the total gross growth in residential properties, the total gross growth in commercial properties, the total gross growth in industrial properties, utility properties, personal property, all of that stuff. So you can kind of see, generally speaking, where the growth is. But from a property to property standpoint, that's just, I would be remiss to take that task on because it would be, I don't think it would be an effective use of our time.
I'll do it.
Go ahead.
I'm doing spreadsheets.
Okay. Well, thank you. Okay, Klaus.
Klaus Vandenberg, 3043, which are my proud taxpayer, usually like to contribute, and particularly education and the arts, and when there's meaningful contributions to be made. Our taxes went up 23% last year, 20% this year. So we're making up a lot of for the averages. And I think we do have a good sense. I mean, you're publishing the 5-year digest, so we do know what the net actually increase is actually the tax digest. And the actual point that I want to make is we budget our rent values in the city and the residential neighborhood. The residences were paying a lot of the taxes here, and we experienced really fewer services. And then the increase, the factor increase of the taxes, even if the millage rate stays the same, it hurts particularly since the money is flowing more over here on this side than the other side. And I think looking at the millage, one can look at the millage rate in lots of different ways. And one way, since we sort of have a good sense of what the area, what the progression is in terms of the net digest, actually, and so the budget probably should be set also more in expectation of the net rather than the growth. Then you would have less, you always can spend more money later, rather than budgeting a lot and then using the millage rate to fund afterwards and adjusting. But also in particular, since as many residents have experienced, and there are a few who have 0%, that actually it's important to look at the balance between the two. That what we're doing in the downtown area, we're ending up with a lot of apartment complexes where, as you have heard the last 10 years from every financial advisor, the income is less than if you would have condos or townhouses or anything else. And so we have an economy that's being built around lots of people here, entertainment in the downtown area, while it looks like we're paying a lot of taxes for that and don't get much for it because most of this entertainment downtown will be run by private, by the owners of the apartment complexes and whatever. So in terms of taxes, this kind of inequality that's been spiraling everywhere in this country is, we experience this as well. So I would really, in terms of value, also appreciate if you could, I know it may not look like to some people, $100, people who buy houses here for $1 million with cash, $100 is nothing. For others, when we're looking at this year after year after year, and we're being compared to ranch houses already that are in the 700,000s, while ours is sort of being crept up year by year by year, and it adds up. Actually, so I would really be looking at sound budgeting. I'd take the net value of the digest, being more conservative, and you may have money left over later on. And so I would appreciate to think about to set out a signal for the community that you appreciate. I mean, we're taking care of the residential area. Our properties are increasing. We're paying most of the freight here.
I hate to interrupt, but it's been 3, but if you could wrap it.
I will wrap up. And so appreciate if you could really consider in setting a signal for the citizen actually to roll back the rate. And when you look again at budgeting use, I mean, that we're all repeating. It's 20%. But you also know that they're not going to set our property back where it was. So it's going to be a couple % or whatever, if at all, or freeze things. So take that into account and actually express to the citizens, express the value by setting that signals and doing some sound budgeting.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. All right. Thank you for your comment. Others? Yes.
Philip Fiddish, 3230 Kensington. My concern is with a privately owned building on Covington. The county values at 21 or 22 million dollars. It pays no taxes, county, school, otherwise, for 15 years. They entered into an agreement with the Downtown Development Authority for something called a payment in lieu of taxes. And I'm trying to investigate because there wasn't a lot of information. It looks like that payment didn't go into the actual general fund. It looks to me like that went to the DDA. So to me, that's like, if I could pay a lawyer a lot of money so I wouldn't have to pay taxes for 15 years, it wouldn't, my money wouldn't actually go to the taxes, it would go to the person who helped me get out of 15 years of taxes. Now, a $21 million property that's privately owned is 40 to 45 homes. And I think that if the residents realize that 45 of their neighbors paid no taxes because they've made a deal, that wouldn't go over well. And that's what I've been trying for about a year to understand. We've asked about it in several meetings. So if I have that wrong, if that what is it, $450,000 went to the general fund or went to the city, then I will stand corrected. But it's my understanding it went to the DDA. And it wasn't a pre-tax payment, it was a payment to set up this deal so that they don't have to pay taxes. And based on what I understand, the little bit I've been able to figure out, it just doesn't seem like we should have to cover for that. Thank you.
Yeah, you are incorrect. It was a payment in lieu of taxes for $550,000, not $450,000. That $550,000 payment in lieu of taxes was placed in the general fund at the time of closing when the DDA sold that building to its current owner. The payment in lieu of taxes was calculated based on a 9.8 millage rate over the course of 15 years. So the taxes owed to the city were actually paid to the city up front rather than on an annual basis. So the reason that the DDA and the BOMC were comfortable negotiating that was because $550,000 today is more valuable than $550,000 coming in over a 15-year period. Now, it is true that the abatement that is placed on that property abated taxes away from the county and the county school system. So they are not paying taxes to the county or the county school system. The state allows DDAs to abate county taxes. That was an abatement that helped the sale. The DDA also received an administrative consideration upon the sale and did receive revenue from the sale of the property in addition to the sale price themselves. But I can say without a shadow of a doubt that the pilot payment did not go to the DDA. It went directly to the general fund. We've discussed that in public on numerous occasions. Firstly, at both DDA and BOMC meetings at the time that property transaction occurred. And we've discussed that subsequently during both budget and audit discussions. So let's clear that up right now. That's what happened. So the city has already received the tax money it was due on that property. It just happened all at one time up front. And that's how it works.
Thank you.
Paul.
Aldora, 820 Stratford Road. I guess 3 points. Did the DDA, when they paid that, did that basically freeze their value at around $7 million for 15 years?
Their valuation doesn't necessarily mean much because they are not responsible for paying. That's not their taxable valuation, right? Their taxable valuation is zero because they're not paying taxes to anyone. The pilot payment that the city received was a negotiated payment on the front end of what the taxes would be projected to be. So
their projection included increase each year.
It did. It included a 3% increase in the value of the building each year.
Then the second point, quite some time ago, you described the rollback situation. I just found this in the last couple of days. This is an example of the rollback computation from the state. It would be really helpful if you all could share this rollback worksheet with the public. I know in my mind, it would clear up why you publicly you say taxes are going up 4%, and people are getting bills for 10, 15, 20, and 30%. This particular worksheet does have most of the things you mentioned, but it also has quite a few exemptions that if we could see Avondale's, I think it would really help everybody be on the same page and how the facts would be on it. Help us all move forward together versus not understanding. You advertise a 4% increase and it's triple that. So is that something we could get posted on the website or bring tomorrow?
Sure, but I do want to reiterate that it's not triple. That,
okay,
right? So the rollback rate is based on the gross increase of valuation of existing property. And the 5-year tax levy is based on the net increase in the increase in the net digest. Two different things, right? Also, I want to reiterate that the 11.76 projected increase in the net digest does not include the appeal process, which will most certainly reduce that number significantly as it has in previous years.
I understand.
Yeah.
I think we all deeply appreciate your explanations. Some of it's hard to follow.
Yeah, we can publish that.
If you could publish it, it would be easy to.
Sure.
It would just make more sense.
Yeah.
It would be helpful to understand.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am, yeah.
Linda Abram, I'm at 3125 Kensington. I have a couple of things. One was that my understanding of the tax assessment letter that we get does not include the city tax because it's not out yet. So then when you get a tax assessment that says your taxes are going to be whatever it is, that's not including what the city of Avondale is going to put on us. And I got that from the tax assessor's office.
Well,
I don't know if that's true or not.
that's not true. That's not true. What your assessment letter gives you is the increase in the receipts that you have to pay as a result of the change in your appraised value, right? So if the millage rate assessed by the city is the same as it was last year, that's your multiplier. So yes, for example, if you have a millage rate of 9.55 this year, and you had a millage rate of 9.55 last year, the difference in the taxes you will owe to the city will directly correlate with the increase in your appraisal value. Yes.
Okay. My other point is that what we've been addressing so far is there's a tax increase, but we haven't addressed what other things the city can do besides increase our taxes or keep them the same as y'all are saying. But they're increased because property values are going increasing. We've gone to 1 day of garbage pickup now in an effort to decrease taxes. I don't see that that's helped. Having been through processes with the city recently, experienced in building a house, and seeing the sheer number of consultants that y'all use, and wondering why. Because then you hire more people too that are supposed to be doing the job that the consultant is doing. I just don't see some of the fiscal responsibility in that. And that I'm wondering too, is there anything that says that would show us that the salary rates of the people that are being hired by the city to work are comparable to this size city? It seems like some of their salaries are more appropriate for a much larger city than Avondale. That's it.
I can speak to all that too.
Or we can.
Yeah, well, first of all, the change in sanitation resulted in a direct $220 savings to every single household. That's real, meaning that the sanitation fee that you were billed last year is now $220 less per household this year. So that's factual. It's hard to understand what you mean by lots of consultants, because we have significantly reduced the amount of consultants necessary to conduct business here through the addition of staff, significantly. Third, the compensation packages offered by the city of Avondale Estates are not competitive in the Atlanta market, meaning that the employees here actually make a reduced salary than other cities that we compete with. And you can't compare a small city to it, like Avondale Estates, to a small rural community in South Georgia, because the cost of living is completely different. So our compensation packages aren't based on the size of the city. They're based on the cost of living in the Atlanta metro area, specifically the cost of living within the perimeter of the Atlanta area, because that's who we're competing against to get employees. So that being said, I welcome our residents to make suggestions as to what it is they believe we should eliminate. But we try every chance we get to become more efficient and more effective and reduce cost. I mean, case in point, we just switched sanitation to save everybody $220. So $220, right, equates to about anywhere, depending on the value of your home, anywhere between $500,000 and $1 million on your home value. So that is a significant reduction in the cost of living in Avondale Estates.
Well, and the part that we can't really take credit for is what it would have cost to keep sanitation in the city. It was going to increase. Again, you can't really say, well, we saved you $200 plus the $100 you didn't have to spend, but it kind of is that. But the one thing I'll say about consultants, I mean, there are times when you want to hire a consultant, because if you can hire a consultant and pay him $20,000, isn't that cheaper than hiring a person and paying them $80,000 for half a year's work, So we use consultants to supplement our, we don't have a large number of people on staff, so we have to use consultants just to get work done, but I think it's a super efficient way to do it. And sometimes it's just a question of expertise. So I don't know what a lot of consultants means either. I think we very efficiently use consultants to help us with the task at hand. I think every time, I'm up here a lot, everybody in this city hall is busy. They're doing something. And it's something that requires a skill. I feel like they're operating very efficiently. I think we are punching far above our weight in this city. We are doing a lot of projects that I feel like need to be done, possibly needed to be done, but we're doing a lot of projects and we need people to help us manage that. And sometimes we need consultants to help us do that. So I feel like we're operating very efficiently. That said, we also have to put some money aside for capital projects. If we, sometimes you do have to fix it before it's broken, because if you don't, it's going to cost 3 times as much. We usually fix things when they're broken, but we are trying to catch up. We're trying to make sure that we're not going to spend a ridiculous amount of money in the future. We put a lot of thought into that, but it's tough for us. I mean, we're 3,300? 600 people, sorry. And we have a lot of infrastructure to deal with, primarily stormwater, which is now our sole responsibility. I feel like we're doing a lot for a city our size, but that's my opinion. But anyway, thank you. Yes, sir.
Where is Jaworski 32 Berkeley Road? And by the way, 30% is not unusual on your tax increase. You know, years ago, before any of you were sitting here as part of the mayor and commissioners, used to come to the meetings a lot. The big emphasis was, we gotta have commercial, we gotta have commercial property, we gotta have commercial property, so we can control and reduce taxes to the taxpayers, homeowners. Well, it looks to me like you've got that, or you're very close to it. You have the South City Partners, the Willis Towers, you've got the Trammell Crow, you've got all those other businesses moving in. When are we gonna see the payoff?
You already are.
How? I don't see the tax rate going down.
Well, it has. It was 10.987 9 years ago when I started. 10.987. I believe that was the number, some odd number. We reduced it to 9, a full mill to 9.857.
Yep.
Then to 9.8, and then last year to 9.55. I hope we can continue to incrementally lower the millage rate to try to stave off that curve. The other number, if you will, is that, 9 years ago, about 90% of our property tax revenue came from the residential side and 10% from the commercial. And now that number is?
So it was actually 93.7, and now it's, this is gross value, and now it's 76.5, 23.5.
Yep.
Additionally, I believe, so if I'm correct, correct me. The revenue we're receiving from the Willis and Trammell Crow are paying for the town green?
Well, essentially, so
and other things.
the bulk of the net increase in revenue expected to be generated is coming from those two properties as their abatements burn off.
Does Trammell Crow, they have some sort of they didn't have to start paying taxes right away, the way I understood it. Are they now paying taxes?
Yes.
And they had to start paying taxes right away, but just not at the rate they
Right.
would be paying 10 years down the road.
How long do they have that?
Every year, 6% more tax,
For how long?
10 years.
10
And
So-
they're in year 5, correct?
And the
Willis is in year 5, the Jade's in year 3.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know which
So we're
one.
halfway through the Willis burn off, if you will, and, third of the way through the Trammell Crow burn off. In both cases, we, from day one, were collecting more taxes on those properties than we ever did. And we were collecting taxes to cover services on those properties. That's my best I can do to answer your question. But I think the numbers are working in our favor. We have lowered the millage rate, again, 10 to 9.8 something to 9.8 to 9.55. There's a big vote coming up in November that may change that. But we'll have to talk about that after that vote happens and what we're going to do about that.
Can I offer one
Yes.
last perspective on that too? Besides lowering the millage rate, it's this increase in commercial value that's happening gradually happening in the downtown. And remember, we had the pandemic and some other things that slowed that down. But it is happening, and you guys are going to see in the next couple of years, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, there's going to be a lot more commercial activity and more taxes coming in. But I think one way to look at it isn't just, can we have our taxes lowered, but just trying to keep the millage rate the same. That's one of the reasons we've been able to keep the millage rate at 9.55 is because of this income coming in from Trammell Crow and the Willis. Around us, a lot of folks are raising their millage rate. Okay, so there's that too, just consider
Well,
that.
and the fact is, I mean, once, we're trying to create a sustainable model and a sustainable flow of commercial tax for the future. Because again, we have a lot of problems to fix, and we're gonna have more in the future, and we'll probably fix them and then turn around and start fixing them again. That's just the way it works. You know, you have to paint your house every 10 years. So, but the big picture is we're just trying to take the burden off of you. I mean, that's what a lot of this stuff is about. Unfortunately, yes, sometimes abatements are what is needed to get people to develop. I don't like it either. I feel like it's like these NFL owners are saying, if you don't build me a new stadium, I'm going to go somewhere else. But it's kind of the way the game is played. And again, we came out ahead from day one. So we're trying to create a more sustainable tax base so that you aren't handling the burden for the next umpteen years. That's kind of, I would say, the big plan is just smart growth, sustainability, so that there's a there in 20 years, 50 years, 100 years. That's, I hope that's what we're doing. You know, anyway, all right, thank you. Other questions? Oh, there is Bob.
Bob Mees, Little Tree Art Studios, and I'm a resident. I've been in the commercial area since 1991. And whatever taxes we paid or residents have paid, I can tell you, I think all the money has been spent over there. Now the park came along, and I got to tell you, with the park, that really is going to help kick the commercial district. I mean, first, I think Evola, they were refusing to do anything till there's a park. Now there's a park, and when you talk about the commercial area, you got 13, 15 acres undeveloped, you got junkyards, you got lots with teeny little businesses that don't generate anything or tax money. So you're talking about a business district that's probably at 30% of its potential at most, paying 23% of the taxes. So when money is spent over here, any healthy city, I'm thinking the commercial end of it's supposed to be 35%, 40, somewhere in there, and that's what they should shoot for here to help out. But you can't do that if you don't have developed areas over here. If the city doesn't put money over here to develop it, and I can tell you, for 30 years, they didn't. You can drive around and look. So if people want to complain, oh, money's being spent over here, it hasn't been, but it is, and it really needs to be. Because if it is, and this commercial area really grows, and it will, because the businesses over there are intending to have that happen, it really will help. It'll make a big difference. Now, is there a Northwoods project or something like that?
That's complete. That's, you go ahead.
Yeah, that was a stormwater project at the lake
Oh, okay.
that we recently completed.
And then wasn't that a lot of money?
Was?
Yeah. Where'd that money come from?
Uh,
Somebody?
It came from the same sources as we're discussing tonight.
All the money isn't spent over here. And that park was essential to get these 13 acres at least to start building something. Because when they do, that's going to get taxed. It's really going to help. So I'm just here to say, I'm a resident, but I've also been here in business since 1991, and we have really tried to make things happen. And the people around us and the other small business owners that you know their names, they've tried to make things happen. So we need your help. So either buying coffee or whatever, but it's not like you're wasting your money, putting money over here to make it better. It needs to get better because then it will grow. And commercial, look at downtown Decatur. You think that's not making that city money? They're doing all right. That's my spiel.
Thank you. Okay. Jan.
Jan Hofer, 89 Berkeley. Just from a visionary perspective, I want to remind everybody that the community supported the master plan. And the goals of that were to develop the downtown and to make this a city that was walkable. And it seems to me that the money being spent to do that is what we asked for. I mean, we wanted the plan. We didn't think about the money it might cost, but it cost money.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Oh, we do? Yeah, man, I gotta get some new glasses. Liz?
Liz, yeah.
Liz?
She's got a stuff.
We can't hear you.
Can you?
We can hear you now.
Okay, okay. Just need to get a little closer to the microphone. Thank you all for being here, and I really always appreciate learning more what's going on and hearing more from folks. I have two general comments before I speak to the issue. First of all,
We can't hear you again.
not loud enough? Is that better?
You're very faint.
Is that better?
That's better.
Okay. Sorry, I've just got to get right up to the microphone. Now it's okay?
That's fine.
Okay. I mean, at the first meeting where I was there in person, we had the difficulty that people had lots of questions and no questions got answered. Now, with all due respect, I think maybe we've gone a little too far in the other direction. I'm concerned that there are people who haven't got a chance to speak, and this is really supposed to be a public hearing. So I did want to say that. Glad to have the information, and I do really appreciate that we're back to a better back and forth, and I think it's overall much better for us, for the city. Second general comment, I'm concerned to see a kind of bifurcation emerging where the imputation is that if people have concerns about service reductions or about roads not being taken care of, or, you know, the lake needs dredging or whatever, and say the money is going to the other side, that implies that folks are not in favor of development. You all know I've come to dozens and dozens of meetings. We're delighted to see the commercial development. It's fantastic to hear these figures. For people to be in favor of a little more attention to their immediate area, or to continue to be concerned about things and so on, this does not mean that anybody is against downtown development. And I think it would be much better for us as a city if everyone would stop taking that sort of gesture of concern for the residential side to be a sign of lack of support for our businesses. I just don't think it's accurate. So in that spirit, I mean, I spoke last time, and I will just say very briefly, it is not the case that the city must choose to keep the millage rate the same in order to cover a very generous revenue increase. On the contrary, reducing the millage rate and having more money for next year are, unless I have very much misunderstood things, compatible with one another. So I suggest that y'all consider, doesn't have to be large, a small rollback to help people offset whatever you feel is manageable to do, and offset to help people manage the really vast increases in taxes that a lot of folks are seeing. So I think I forgot to say my address, 3243 Wiltshire, Liz Goodstein. Thank you very much. And I just, you know, I so appreciate all the work that y'all are doing and all the efforts. And again, the explanations I think were very useful and everything tonight, but I do hope everyone will have the patience to listen to all the folks who came out for what they have to say, and to try and listen in the spirit of remembering that we're all trying to be in one city, and more discussion and more transparency is a good thing. When the people are asking questions, it does not mean that they're calling things into question, but it also doesn't mean that they don't necessarily disagree. And I think we need to work on having that spirit of disagreement about things. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, and I'll just say, I mean, you know, there's always going to be some kind of division in the community, whether it's north-south or business resident or this or that. And you know, and I respect that because, you know, you put your hard-earned money into a business, you want to defend that and you want investment coming back from the city, and as a resident, same thing. What I can assure you of is we try very hard to balance things. We don't look at it as this side of the hedge or that side of the hedge. We look at things openly as priorities of here's what we got, here's what we need to fix, here's the order we need to fix it in. I think we do a really good job of balancing that, and we don't think that way. And if you do, again, we respect that, okay? Because not everyone lives here, not everyone has a business here, some are both, but we try really hard to balance that out. And I think if you really look at it, we do. We try to pave roads in the residential side as much as we do on the commercial side. So we're trying really hard to balance that out. You know, the residential side has flourished for a long time and has done well. Residential development is a very different thing than commercial development, in my opinion. But the business side needed some love. And, you know, so, but we're trying really hard to invest money everywhere because we want this entire city, all of it, to thrive, but then it all works together. And so we don't see things in terms of this or that. We try to see the whole picture. So that's just my 2 cents worth, but thank you. So someone else have their hand up?
No. Jane Darnell.
Jane.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, if you could speak up just a little bit.
Okay, I will. Is that better?
A little bit better. Thank you. Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about the appeal process, property appeal, tax appeal. My property went up $120,000 in value this year. I almost fainted. And so I am filing an appeal. And one of the things I have learned that I want to share with our neighborhood is that when you file an appeal, no matter what the outcome is, that freezes your taxes for that year and the following 2 years. And that many investors in real estate or people who own properties watch to see when their property comes off of the frozen part and they file another appeal, because then that freezes their taxes for the next 3 years again, no matter what the outcome of the appeal is, there is a freeze. So I just think that's important information for a lot of people to know that they don't know about. Another concern that I have is I was told that, and I won't say which board, but one of the boards was doing a lot of work in the city or making recommendations for this or that or the other to be done. And they made it known that most of the emphasis is on the historic area of the city. And I don't live in the historic area of the city, and I don't feel very good about that because I think I pay plenty of taxes just like anybody else. And I don't think all the good stuff should go to the historic area. I think it should be spread out. So I think it's great to say that we spread it out, but when you have a chairman of a board who states that most of the effort of that board is going to the historic part of the city, there's some conflict somewhere. There's something that doesn't add up, that's not quite right. So I just want to encourage you to take a real close look at what the various boards are doing and where they're doing the work. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Stacy.
Stacy? 1 second.
Hey, y'all, can you hear me?
Okay, Stacy?
Can you hear me?
You may be muted. Still can't hear you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you make it a little louder somehow?
Let me lean in a little bit further. Is that better?
That's good. That's perfect. Perfect.
Yeah. So look, thanks guys. I commented last week and I'm not going to repeat any of that. I do have a question since you are taking questions. So Patrick, you may be the best one to answer this. If you shared the consolidation and valuation digest, the 23 versus 24. I'm just curious, if I look at total residential 23 with appeals, it went from 293 million up to 321, 365 in 2024. That's about a 9.5% interest. But if I look at the commercial property, it went the opposite way. It actually went from 81 million, and I'm just going to round, 81 million down to 68 million. So roughly a 15% decrease. I'm just curious what's driving that. I mean, I love all the work that's going on downtown.
Sure.
About that.
No, I'm happy to explain that, Stacy. That is a change in the way that the county accounts for exemption burn off for commercial properties. So in the 23 digest, they put the full value of the abated properties in the digest and then applied the exemption to it on the back end. Now, when they've accounted for it in the digest, the exemption is applied on the front end. So it looks like there has been a reduction in value of commercial property, but that's not actually the case. Because even though it appeared that the commercial value was higher last year, the taxable portion of that commercial property was actually lower because the exemption was applied on the back side. Whereas now the exemption is applied on the front side, and the true taxable value of the property is what's listed in the digest. I know that is probably the most confusing piece of the digest, and I'm happy to email with you to point out exactly what I'm talking about. But needless to say, there has actually been growth in the taxable commercial digest, not a reduction in the value of the commercial tax digest.
Got it. Thanks, Patrick. That's very helpful, but sure makes it hard when it's apples and oranges, I guess.
It is, and Calvin Hicks sends his apologies. We talked about it on the phone. He's the tax assessor for the county, and he knew that would be confusing, but that's the explanation.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Another.
That's it.
Okay. Any others out here? All right. Well, seeing none, I'd like to bring it back up here.
Actually, Mr. Mayor, I have a couple of comments to make.
Okay, sure.
I appreciate everyone coming out and, just making themselves heard. And I do understand, how folks feel about it. I'm a homeowner myself in the city, and, I think my calculation was that mine went up 13.5% over the past year. I understand that. I was on vacation last week and spent a lot of time thinking about this. I wasn't able to dial in and listen to the Zoom meeting due to where I was, but I did put a lot of thought into this. And one of the things that I did a little bit of research on is the idea of a homestead exemption. That's something that all of the cities around us do, except Clarkston. That's the only one that I found that didn't do it. So really what I'd like to do is, see if I can get that on the agenda for us to discuss some type of homestead exemption.
We can. I mean, we did discuss that a year ago, two years ago, maybe.
I don't remember that.
But we can.
Sure. Yeah, just want to point out that is a legislative action that would need to happen at the state level. So that wouldn't be an immediate resolution. If y'all decided to do a homestead exemption, it wouldn't be able to be immediately applied.
Yeah, no, but I'd like to see where, whether that's something that's feasible for us.
Sure. Okay. All right. Any other? Well, we closed comment.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. So, any up here? Okay. All right. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
I'll just say that was Commissioner Smith. Do I have a second?
Second.
That was Commissioner Watt. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.